setting yourself a pretty tough challenge in terms of different time periods, stories within stories. This is actually a tough movie to make in terms of just telling the narrative in a way that's going to engage the audience all the way through. Why set yourself that challenge? What was interesting to you about the complexity of the story?
Well, what was interesting, I'm glad you brought up style, because I think because of my other life, people usually gravitate to style. And style for me, really, in filmmaking, unless it serves a purpose and helps tell the story, it's not important. Substance is, for me, what's important. And the thing to take away for me from this film is that when you find someone in your life, someone that's important to you, someone that you connect to, don't let them go. Hold on. Hold on. So, well, I'll let you go back to that. But as I was saying, style really has to serve a character, and so there's there's a real purpose for Susan's very pristine, cold life. I think it's something that our society and our culture constantly tells you, this is going to make you happy. You'll be happy if you have this. You'll be happy if you have that. And in my other life, I am one of those people responsible for doing that. It's true, but I'm very divided about it. And I grew up in New Mexico in a much simpler way. Whenever I can, I escape to my house there, to the desert, to the sky, and I feel much more in touch with the earth, the planet, why we're here. And so it is something that I struggle with. In this particular case, it is very important to us understanding Susan and her world.
And in terms of the story within the story, the different time periods, and how they connect, what for you was interesting about illuminating Susan through that narrative?
Well, all the stories fuel each other. Jake's character says at a certain point, Susan's lying on a red sofa, and she pisses him off there, so he later kills her on a red sofa in the inner novel. But the point of the inner novel is that he's saying to her, this is what you did to me. This is what you did to me. You destroyed our life. You destroyed me. But guess what? In the end, I wasn't weak. I was the one who stuck with what I believed in. I was the one who, in the end, wins. In real life, as Edward, and also as Tony. But you asked a question, and I got off on a sidetrack. Oh, the three stories. They fuel each other. They fuel each other. They're all interwoven because, as Jake's character says, when she says, I think you need to quit writing about yourself, he says, but no one ever writes about anything but themselves. And so through his writing, he is telling her, as I said, what she did to him. And so those stories twist around. For example, at one point, we find that he realizes that she's had an abortion. And his anger from seeing that, then we jump back into the inner novel, and that anger fuels his outburst with Michael Shannon, where he says, I should have stopped it. I should have stopped it. He's also saying, I should have stopped the abortion. I should have stopped it. I should have seen it coming. So all these stories start to twist, and they are essentially the same story.
But I also like to
Did I answer that question?
What I really like about the way the film unfolds as well is that you get a sense that storytelling, the narrative, and art can actually help heal mistakes we've made in our lives. And somehow through recreating them, through telling a story about it, or making art out of it, that somehow you can find a different solution, resolution.
Well, this is a piece of fiction, and we are seeing it through Susan's eyes. If you read, she was the most beautiful woman in the world. All of us in this room will conjure something different. So this is, in a sense, a fantasy. It is a moral allegory. Susan at one point walks into her entry hall, and she's staring at a picture of two guys with guns at each other in a field of grass. And for a moment we think, okay, we're back in that other story. She then steps into the frame. I don't know whether you noticed, but when Jake dies, he dies in exactly that scene, exactly that grass. So her life, her visions, are then infiltrating what she's reading, which is also, of course, autobiographical in a sense, and what he's trying to say to her. Again, I don't know whether I answered your question.
One of the things that surprised me about the film was the West Texas narrative. The narrative from the novel is so intense, so gritty, so dirty. And that was maybe not what we might expect from a Tom Ford film, if we're all going on the previous one.
Well, I have a couple of lives. I grew up in Texas. I know West Texas very well. I have so many cousins there. Can I ask you to turn that light off? I'm sorry, it's just I can't concentrate. And so, yeah, I lead a life in Los Angeles and London, but I also have a ranch in New Mexico. I ride horses, I have cattle, I know that world very well. And what I wanted to do was contrast those two worlds. You know, Susan's slick, cold world is colored in a way that is, it's very blue toned, it's very cold, yet when we have color in her world, it's quite sharp and quite garish. Whereas the inner novel is green. The colors are different, they're deeper, they're richer. And then, of course, her flashback. Like I think when often many of us remember the past, it's very vivid and warm, because we have a tendency, at least I do, to remember the past in a nostalgic way. Again, I don't know whether I answered your question. I said what was important to me. It's always good to sort of make them nervous.
Before we open it up to your questions, I want to just ask you one final thought about the casting of the film, and Amy Adams in particular. I think it's really wonderful. And why her this one.
Oh my God, editing Amy, there is not a bad take of a bad moment. She does so much with her face. She is a spectacular actress. You know, it would be very easy to hate this character, Susan. You know, she has everything. She's beautiful. She lives this life. She does this terrible thing to her first husband. It would be very easy for us to just say, well, fuck her. She got what she deserved. But she's really a victim of her upbringing. She's a victim of our culture. She's really a victim of her own insecurity. And so I wanted us to empathize with Amy. Also, or to Amy's character, Susan. Also, for an enormous part of the story, she's reading a book. Amy is an actress, I would say maybe one of the best actresses working today, who can she telegraphs with her face what she's feeling. And I find Amy's eyes incredibly soulful. I wrote the line where Jake says to her, "You have sad eyes, they're the same eyes that your mother had." Thinking of Amy, and I don't necessarily think of her eyes as sad, but they're soulful. If you know Amy and you look into her eyes, you can't help but feel something. And I wanted that to really come through in the part of Susan.
Thank you. I think you answered
I
the question.
did actually answer that.
All right, let's go to your questions now. We'll go first right here.
Yeah, I'm curious about the first chase sequence with the car. It's quite a long sequence. How did you
17 minutes.
How did you keep up the suspense throughout?
Is that beef? Or like garbage truck? I'm listening to you, but beep, beep, beep. Can we shut the door? As you can see, I have a very hard time focusing. I sometimes close my eyes and talk like this.
Just to repeat quickly,
I was going to say, repeat his questions.
the question was about the first chase sequence, which is 17 minutes long, and how did you maintain suspense?
Well, I try to take every scene and really give it 3 acts. I think that a scene has to have a beginning, a middle, and then a resolution. The resolution in that scene is unfortunately the family driving away. So it was a pivotal part of the movie. And in that scene, Aaron Taylor Johnson has to kind of own that scene, because he is the scary he is the scary, again, I can't think, I'm sorry. He is the scary thing. If we're not terrified in that scene, and he is what Jake's character is saying that Amy's character did to him, stole his family. And so that scene has to really be visceral. So it was a key, pivotal moment in the film.
Thank you. Time for another couple of questions. We'll go right here. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
could you please
to be, why it was there, what it was. This woman asked about the opening. Well, all of the art, first of all, Amy inhabits the art world. Amy's character, Susan. She is an art dealer. She gave up a long time ago trying to be an artist because she felt she was too cynical, so she decided to trade in art. So she lives in that world. All of the art in the film is real. The original artists let us use their work. It's all real. I usually don't like a film about the art world where the art is fake because somehow it doesn't have the same emotion that real art does. That is the one and only piece of art that I created. Because I had to imagine myself, okay, well, I'm an artist, and what is it that I want to say? So I've lived in Europe for the last 27 years. So I decided, all right, I'll tell a European perspective of where America is today. It's not what you think. It's not what European perspective of where America is today. I think America used to be thought of as kind of a country of beautiful tan, tits and ass, Farrah Fawcett in a little red swimsuit, all teeth and hair. And I think that a lot of the world today thinks of America as gluttonous, overfed, aging, decayed in a sense. And that was my original intention. Put your camera down. Because I'm talking to you, I can't talk to a lens. Anyway, back to what I was trying to say, which was important. I thought, that was my original intention, which is why these women are wearing little bits and pieces of Americana. So I wanted to create a sort of absurd conceptual art, because Amy then later says everything is junk, our culture is junk. However, that completely changed. I shot these women. They were the most beautiful people. They were so free. They were so excited. They were so happy. They were so joyful. And I fell in love with them. I fell in love with everything about them. And I realized after I shot that in a sense they were a microcosm of what I was trying to say about the world, which is these women, I thought, God, they're so happy, they're so joyful, they're so glad to be here. And it's because they had let go of our perception of what they're supposed to be. And that is what is trapping Amy's character, Susan. She's trying so hard to be what she thinks she's supposed to be. And she's miserable. And these women were so joyful because they've let go of that. They've let go of this idea of what we're supposed to be. And so it became something quite different in the film. Well, I think what he's saying is you killed me. You absolutely killed me.
So it's not a sign of weakness on his part.
It's not a sign of weakness.
Well, first of all, it's a fictional novel. In the end, he's over her. He makes her fall in love with him all over again, sets her up. This has been cathartic for him. He had 20 years to get over